to second the motion.
Good friend, you have 20 minutes to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to second the motion on the debate of the President's speech, the State of the Nation address, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the majority leader has eloquently spoken about the speech, Mr. Speaker, and if you are a president and you have the majority leader on your side, I think 50% of your problems are solved. So, Mr. Speaker, when you become president, make sure the majority leader is on your side. God willing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Thursday, 21st of November, 2024, Parliament held a joint sitting of both houses, Mr. Speaker. And the President made a State of the Nation address, Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Article 132(1)(c), which requires the President, Mr. Speaker, annually to report in address of the nation on all the measures taken and the progress achieved in the realization of the national values referred in Article 10, publish in the Gazette the details of the measures and progress under Paragraph 1, and submit a report for debate to the National Assembly on the progress, Mr. Speaker, made in fulfilling the international obligation. Mr. Speaker, we were all present here, and this is a very, very important occasion, Mr. Speaker, for the country. And these are some of the benefits that the new constitution has given to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. You are a veteran, Mr. Speaker, member of this House. You remember in the old days, the President just used to come here to open Parliament and address on issues that he feels he wishes, without talking about these issues that now Kenyans are expected, members of Parliament are holding accountable the President, Mr. Speaker. And it is mandatory, Mr. Speaker, for the President to address the nation annually. It's a constitutional requirement. It is not a choice, Mr. Speaker. The only choice he has is to agree with you on the date that he will come here. But for him to come here annually, I am sure next year, God willing, at whatever time he will appear on this House to address the country on those issues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we must be alive to the fact that this year's national address came against the backdrop of certain unique happenings, Mr. Speaker. You remember in June this year, we had demonstrations, the so-called Gen Z demonstrations. We had the formation of the broad-based government, Mr. Speaker. And we had the historic impeachment of the former Deputy President, Mr. Speaker. Those are historical issues that happened in our country the last 6 months, Mr. Speaker. And the President came to address the nation under the backdrop of those issues, Mr. Speaker. But one of the things that I picked, Mr. Speaker, from the address of the President is the cancellation of the Adani contract, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans have raised issues on the Adani contract, Mr. Speaker. And it is very rare for the minority leader to applaud the President. But Mr. Speaker, on this occasion, I want to applaud him because it was timely, he did the right thing, and he read the mood of the country and took bold decision that Kenyans were happy with, Mr. Speaker. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, the cancellation of the Adani contract does not end our problems that we have in the airports, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you are a regular traveler at the Jomo Kenyatta Airport, Mr. Speaker, personally, I don't believe we have an airport. There is no difference, Mr. Speaker, of that airport at the moment and the bus park of Migori, Mr. Speaker, where the matatus and the buses, people are board from, Mr. Speaker. You drive into that airport, Mr. Speaker, you will not know where to start from and where to end, Mr. Speaker. If myself, I have a problem, I'm a Kenyan who regularly uses that airport, Mr. Speaker. What do you think of a visitor, Mr. Speaker, who doesn't know anything about that airport? He knows nobody. You don't know where to park your car. You don't know where you're supposed to be dropped, Mr. Speaker. Everything is leaking. The roof is leaking.
You go there when it's raining.
Mr. Speaker, I don't, my God, I request, I'm praying to God that I don't appear there at a time like now when it is raining. Because it can be worse. You don't, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans must know, and I'm telling those Kenyans who gave their strong views on the Adani issues, Mr. Speaker, now to give views now on how they want us to transform the airport, Mr. Speaker. It can't be one-way traffic. If you say the Adani thing is bad, then now is the time that they should give us ideas, views on how to improve our airport. That is the first place visitors interact with this country, Mr. Speaker. You land at the airport. You don't know whether you have landed at Kisumu bus park or you have landed at the national airport. Even Wilson is better of late because it's smaller in size and the traffic is smaller. At the Jomo Kenyatta, things are bad, Mr. Speaker. And you can't tell me it is the government that's supposed to fix everything. Yes, they have to do their work. They can fix what they can fix. But look at the standards. Look at what's happening globally, Mr. Speaker. Look at how PPP has transformed many countries. Go to this place, Turkey, Mr. Speaker. There's a complete new airport of bigger than Migori town, where I come from. Bigger than Migori city. Migori is not a town now, it's a city. Bigger than Migori city, Mr. Speaker. And it was done through PPP. We want to be a hub. We want to be the hub of this region. Look at what's happening in Ethiopia. Look at what's happening. And then our mind is fixated with issues that we think are them against us. Who is doing this? Who is doing that? I may not vote for Adani myself. But what I want to say on the floor of this house is that for those of us who are against Adani, let us now give alternative views. Let us now give you alternative ways that we can improve our airport, Mr. Speaker. We can't just be saying, oh, Adani was bad, without giving any alternative, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to give you a very good example. If today we did not have this expressway, because this expressway also came through PPP, how shall we be accessing our airport today from this point? Today you can take less than 10 minutes to go to the airport. If this expressway was not there, how will you reach the airport? Mr. Speaker, these are hard questions we must ask ourselves. We cannot do politics at the expense of killing the country. Expressway is a good example of a PPP. It might have been done expensively. The cost might have been high, but it is serving the purpose that it was meant for. Many Kenyans today, everybody today who can afford to pay asks you, how can I access the expressway, from which point? When you are coming from Southern Bypass, you want to access the expressway. When you are coming from Thika Superhighway, you want to access the expressway. Why? Because it has made life easy. That is what PPP does, Mr. Speaker. It makes lives better. But I hope now, and I pray, Majority Leader, that in the subsequent decision that is to be made on this issue, transparency will be done. We need to get the next person, the next company that is going to do the PPPs. We want Kenyans to be on board. We want Kenyans to be carried on board, Mr. Speaker, through transparency and accountability. Mr. Speaker, my second issue that I took note in the speech, Mr. Speaker, is about chief and chaff. Mr. Speaker, it's a very good idea. It's a very brilliant idea for us to transform the health sector of this country. And universal health care has been in all manifestos, Mr. Speaker. It's a constitutional, right that every Kenyan must get health care, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, the idea and the laws we have passed here are very good. That's underpin the universal health care, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, but the way it has been rolled out, I believe is not in the right way, because many Kenyans are not aware of that transfer from NHIF to SHA, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even when IEBC is conducting mass registration of voters, there's a lot of campaign in the media, there's a lot of campaign in the print media, in the radios, Mr. Speaker, asking people, umejiandikisha je? This one, nobody hears anything about it. We need to do a serious campaign so that Kenyans can know that there is a new program called SHA that is taking over the NHIF program, Mr. Speaker. On that front, Mr. Speaker, I think we can do better, because Kenyans need to be made aware about the benefits of the new system called SHA, Mr. Speaker. And me personally, I believe, because I participated here in passing those laws, If that program is implemented properly, Mr. Speaker, it is going to solve a lot of problems in the healthcare, Mr. Speaker. It is going to solve a lot of problems. But we need to do more awareness, create more, people, Kenyans, to know that there is a new program that is taking place in the country. Mr. Speaker, the issue on the President raised about the conflict of interest bill. Mr. Speaker, if you look at that bill, you will think the people who published that bill published it for the purposes of dealing with members of parliament only. It's like a bill that was meant for MPs only, not other people, other Kenyans who are holding offices like CSS, PSS, parastatal heads. It was purely about members of parliament. The thing must be put in broader perspective. Or everyone who is holding an office must be part and parcel of that conflict of interest bill. It's not members of parliament only who do business. Other Kenyans who are in high offices also do businesses. So when you are targeting certain segment of the Kenyan, leadership, they have to revolt. That is why in the Senate they did 20 amendments on the bill. That's why the bill now is in mediation committee. Mr. Speaker, we need to look at that thing holistically, because it looks like it was targeting. They thought people who are politically exposed are only members of parliament. No. Anybody who holds an office that has been created politically, even the executive is a politically created offices. Those are PEPs. Those are politically exposed people. They must come into this public, it's called what? Conflict of interest bill. So we are going to look into that bill and make sure that all Kenyans who are in different positions, from the chief, from the sub-chief, all the way to the president, from the member of parliament to the MCA, to county officers, chief officers, I don't know what they are called, all those people must be part of this conflict of interest bill. If we are going to drain the swamp, let us drain it properly. Don't just target members of parliament here. Some of these people here are peasants. They are just farmers. They don't even do businesses. Some of them are butchers like Kimani Shungo. They are running butcheries, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, when you're targeting only those people, then you have ulterior motives. I don't know where that bill came from. But that is why it has not gone through. So, Mr. Speaker, if we can look at it holistically, so that everyone is covered under that bill, so that we finish this issue of conflict of interest once and for all, then that will be good, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that I took note in the President's speech is the gender-based violence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that's a very, very sad thing, that our women are being killed, Mr. Speaker, by people whom they trust, by people who stay with them, Mr. Speaker, like what happened the other day in Isili, Mr. Speaker. A family, a lady and her daughter and her niece were all killed at the same time, Mr. Speaker, for no apparent reason, for reasons that are not known, Mr. Speaker. There are other women that have been killed elsewhere in apartments, Mr. Speaker, Airbnb. They were the ones who were killed in Kware area, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these are matter that requires full attention of the law enforcement, Mr. Speaker, Department, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, women cannot live in fear in this country. Women must live with freedom, Mr. Speaker, and do whatever thing they want to do, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want this matter that has been raised by the President to be addressed properly, Mr. Speaker, by the law enforcement, by the police, by the DCI, and everyone who are concerned, Mr. Speaker, so that our women can feel safe, Mr. Speaker. If a woman is not safe, a man cannot be safe, Mr. Speaker. The safety of men is intertwined with the safety of women, Mr. Speaker, and that is a serious matter that the President has raised, Mr. Speaker. Even though the President stretched it a bit, and I felt a bit it was unfair to men once in the speech, Mr. Speaker, but that's now beside the point, because it is about femicide now, and this matter must be handled. Mr. Speaker, the President raised the issue of demonstrations and said that he supports and he acknowledges that Article 37 of the Constitution allows people to picket and demonstrate peaceably. But Mr. Speaker, I want to also say that the national security organs must be very careful on how they deal with the demonstrators, Mr. Speaker, because we don't want life lost under demonstrations that have been allowed by the Constitution, so long as they are peaceful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people should not forget that demonstrations are an important thing, Mr. Speaker. The people who are not now feeling good about it might need it tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. And the people who are using it now might not need it tomorrow also, Mr. Speaker. That's how it goes. The majority leader might not need demonstrations at this point in time. But at a certain time, hapa mbele, he might be the one leading demonstration in the country, Mr. Speaker. So we have to get a balance. We have to get a balance on how to allow the people who want to demonstrate and the people who don't want it. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, this is something that is commonly important to every one of us as politicians, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not predicting anything, but I am saying that I agree with him that demonstrations must be peaceful. They must not destroy people's properties, and they must not, but we must not curtail people's freedoms of assembly and freedoms of association, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. This country, Mr. Speaker, is a constitutional democracy. And once we are a constitutional democracy, we are guided by the constitution that we gave to ourselves, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, when Kenyans give views in the form of public participation, we have to take into consideration what they are saying, because, Mr. Speaker, that is what Kenyans want us to do. But, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans also must be enlightened. They must be taken through civic education. Well, Mr. Speaker, there is a serious conflict between what the government is supposed to do, the executive, what Parliament is supposed to do, and what Kenyans think that should be done, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans must know that they have also delegated their sovereign power to Parliament and the executive, Mr. Speaker, through an election. And they must have trust and faith in what Kenya and what those institutions are doing. Mr. Speaker, a country can fail, a country can become banana if the citizens of that country lose faith in the institutions that they have given themselves through the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And we must always remind Kenyans that it is very important we must have faith in our institutions. Because lack of faith in institutions is anarchy, Mr. Speaker. And now, for that reason, the issue of corruption, the issue of non-adherence to the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, must be addressed in a manner that puts faith in the public, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, like the judiciary now, for example, there are a lot of issues. Kenyans are losing trust and faith in it because some of the decisions that are coming out from there are not, Mr. Speaker, necessarily constitutional decisions, Mr. Speaker. No, they are not. Because yesterday, I came across a judge has issued a court order in Mombasa, and another judge has issued a contrary order on the same issue in Kwale, Mr. Speaker. Counties that are next to each other. Yes, I'm shocked. How can you not? And one has issued that order 4 days earlier than the other. I am sure the other one knew what happened. Mr. Speaker, we cannot run a country. I'm not running a country, but a country cannot be run in that manner, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want to say that Kenyans should not be made to lose faith in the institutions they created for themselves in the Constitution. Parliament has passed many, many bills, Mr. Speaker. And Parliament is one of the institutions that does public participation extensively when you consider to the other two arms of government, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we can do better. I hope I have been in Parliament last year when the President gave his State of the Nation address. And this one, Mr. Speaker, this one has been far much promising and far much satisfying than any other one, Mr. Speaker. And I hope and pray that things get better, because I can see that economically a lot of things have been achieved. And I think after the broad-based government was formed, Mr. Speaker, you can see things changing to the better and things getting now. Kenyans have a lot of faith and hope, Mr. Speaker. The shilling has been stabilized. Inflation has come down, Mr. Speaker. We are praying and hoping that the interest rate will come down, Mr. Speaker, in the shortest time period, and they have shown signs of coming down. So, and God has blessed us with rain now. If our people do good farming, Mr. Speaker, this country will flourish. Mr. Speaker, we must give our people hope, Mr. Speaker. Hopelessness cannot be. We must give hope, Mr. Speaker. We must live on hope, Mr. Speaker. I say thank you very much. There is nothing to support, as the majority leader says. I take note of what the president has said, and as the minority, we are watching and seeing, and we will raise our voice where we think is wrong, and we will support where we think is right. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Junet.